beyond what we know is in the Constitution. One of the powers the president has, executive privilege. Okay? Executive privilege. This is the power the president has to withhold information from the public and from Congress. Okay? The president can withhold information from public and Congress if he feels that it's significant. Now, the thing about executive privilege, and we're not going to talk about this case right now because it's not relevant, but executive privilege, would you say there are some things that the president doesn't need to tell the American public? Oh, yeah. But executive privilege only applies to matters of national security. So, for example, and somebody brought this up today, like Area 51, where we keep top secret Air Force bases and supposedly they keep alien aircraft that's landed. Like, think about this. What if there really were aliens and we'd recovered alien ships? Is that something that the president would be right to keep from the American public? I think so. You just want to know, but the American public and the world can't handle it. Think of the impact it would have on science, on religion, on issues of morality. I mean, God, they would want to do nothing but watch the TV. Quinlan, to an extent, but I tell you what, I'd have to look at that case and what he's mentioned is Trump's tax records that have been ordered released. I don't know. I haven't read up on that, so I can't make a definitive statement on that either way. But I'll have to look into that. Okay. Executive privilege applies only to matters of national security. So, like a president, like let's use a little more realistic one. If we're in the middle of an armed conflict and reporters want to know where our troops are and where they're moving to, it's like the president would be justified in saying, "Yeah, I'm not telling you that. That's a matter of national security." Okay. So presidents, and by the way, George Washington started the premise of executive privilege. He said, look, there's some things the public just doesn't need to know about. And it's largely gone unquestioned. Richard Nixon's the one that screwed it up because during the Watergate scandal, he didn't want to turn over materials like tapes and documents to courts, which would have made him look really bad. And he's like, I can't give them to you. It's important. And he tried to claim it was national security matters too. And they're like, well, the judge was like, I'll be the judge of that. So why don't you just let me check those out? Oof. All right. Now, second power that the president has that's relevant for us here, the president has the ability to issue executive orders. And these are really misunderstood. Okay. Now, an executive order is an order from the president about how to enforce a law. Right? The president is giving an order on how to enforce a law. President can't just make up something and say, for example, from here on out, everyone will refer to me as the czar, or everyone must give me $50. That's not how it works. All right. What you can do, though, is make up orders on how to enforce the law. Remember, sometimes laws are written very vaguely. And if there's a vagueness to the law, then the president can issue an order about how that's going to be done, like the example I gave you relating to Social Security. Since the law doesn't say how payments for Social Security are to be made, the president could come out today and issue an executive order that would say specifically from here on out you have to use direct deposit and or some type of digital pay program. They can Venmo you or send you on PayPal the payment for your stimulus check. Okay, the president would have the authority to do that. All right, and you have to follow it. Now, let me show you. There's a couple executive orders you have on the Schoology machine. Okay, let's go to that. If the internet wants to work. All right, and if you go into your Schoology machine, you're going to see in there in your folder today, there are two relevant documents. Friday, it's not Friday, that's why it's not in there. One is EO Executive Order Truman, and the other one's Executive Order Trump, and you'll see how these work. And they also have little boxes with commentary from me, yours truly, about how this operates. And this was an executive order made by Harry Truman, okay? And the first paragraph or two will identify what the president's purpose is, and it'll establish what gives him the authority to make that order. Because every time you make an executive order, somebody wants to know, well, what law are you basing this on? Okay? Because you can't just make up something out of thin air. So the first paragraph says, look, America's armed services, we want the highest standards of democracy with equality and equality of treatment and opportunity for all those who serve. And it says, look, here's my authority by the power vested in me by the Constitution and as commander in chief. He says, look, since I'm the commander in chief of the military, I have the power to make policy about the military. All right. And it says, here's my goal. Here's my policy goal. The equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin. Since this was made in 1948, what group of people do you think he's wanting to help get equal treatment in the military? Black Americans. Okay? And it says this policy shall be put into effect as rapidly as possible. Now, he doesn't specify here, and you're going to see he's a little bit vague on purpose too. And it says, there shall be created in the National Military Establishment an advisory committee known as the President's Committee on Equality of Treatment and the Opportunity in Armed Services, which will be composed of 7 members designated by the President. All right. Why is he doing that? Because he has a million other things to do. I'm the president, so I look at you all and say, you guys are my committee on equality of treatment and opportunity in the armed services. And so I'm going to put Sid back there in charge of the committee. And in a month, Sid, I'm going to have you meet back with me, and you're going to make recommendations to me about what you think we should do. Okay? Now, he says, look, also, that committee is authorized on behalf of the president to examine rules, procedures of the armed services, and they're going to confer with the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Army, Navy, etc., and they're going to provide will effectuate the policy hereof. And something else that's relevant too, those last couple sections here, he makes it clear, the president makes it clear that any government agency or any government department will cooperate with the committee. So Sid comes to me as president and she goes, Scalise, there's a general who doesn't want to do what I tell him to do. He's kind of stonewalling me and won't talk to me. And I'm like, I shall take care of that for you. So I call up General so-and-so and say, thank you for your service in the military. You're fired. All right. And everybody else gets the memo that I have empowered this committee. And if you defy them, it's the same as what? Defying me, the president. All right. And so ultimately, Harry Truman, what he did was he set this standard here where what he wanted to do was desegregate the military. Okay. Now, executive orders. This executive order in 1948, here's the thing about executive orders. They're not binding, meaning that the next president can come in and rescind those if he doesn't like them. All right. And since 1948, this policy, this executive order has not been rescinded. Why not? Why would it not look good? Because also remember, it's 1948. Oh, well, back in 1948, do you think this was a popular move in 1948? No, it was not. Okay, and a lot of people are angry. But here's the thing. Once the policy goes into effect and we start putting black and white troops in the same barracks, serving in the same units, what did we find out about the military? It works better. And they don't miss a beat. I mean, it's almost like black people can serve their country too. Question over here? A president, like it basically stays in effect unless the president says, I'm canceling that executive order. Okay? Now, if Congress doesn't like what the president does, they can take some action, and we'll tell you about what they can do for a second. Yeah, thousands. Now, executive orders, here's the thing. People didn't change this policy because they found out, well, look, even if I'm the most racist SOB that ever was, you don't change a policy that's working, all right? Because let's say the president who came after Truman, which was Eisenhower, he wasn't a racist by any means, but if he was a racist, he probably wouldn't change this policy because it'll just create a headache for him because people will be like, well, look, man, we've already integrated the military and it doesn't matter and nobody seems to care. So why create a headache for yourself when you've got so many other things as president to deal with? The same way we found that out about in 20, I think it was 2013, finally, when President Obama said that gay people can serve openly in the military. And even if you wanted to reverse that policy, why create a headache for yourself? Right? Even if you were anti-LGBT in the worst possible way, you wouldn't do it because you're like, I have enough problems to deal with. Ooh, now that's an issue. Sure. Ah, Trump was originally keeping people out of the military from serving if they were transgender. However, that policy's since been reversed. Pretty sure he did, actually. Yes, that was a separate one. All right. Now, speaking of Donald Trump and executive orders, okay, this is an executive order he gave that he felt was necessary, and it got a lot of traction, or at least a lot of terms of media attention. It was out there. Donald Trump created an executive order that banned immigrants from certain countries, and he called out 7 specific countries and said, "We're not taking any immigrants from the following countries." And it turned out that all 7 countries were countries that were predominantly what? Muslim. All right. And people were like, it's a travel ban against Muslims. All right. Now, in fairness to Donald Trump, 4 or 5 of those countries were known safe havens for terrorist groups, including Syria, which had been going, had an ongoing civil war, and their leader was using poisonous gas. Terrorist cells were hiding out there. Somalia, which hasn't had a stable government in like 35, 40 years. And uh, Donald Trump, to some extent, there was some justification for that and what he wanted to do. But also, too, Donald Trump's statements throughout his presidential campaign definitely made it seem like he was anti-Muslim. So people were, drawing the conclusions on their own. Okay, but there's a reason we want to use this executive order. Take a look here. Okay, it says, "I, Donald J. Trump, by the authority vested in me in the Constitution and the laws of the United States, including," and he mentions Sections 212 and 215 of the Immigration and Nationality Act and Legal Code, the U.S. Legal Code 1182 and 1185. He's saying, here's what gives me the authority to make this order. Okay? And we're going to get that in a second. Now, he gives the policy and purpose. He says the policy of the United States is to protect its citizens from terrorist attacks and other public safety. Okay? And he's going to empower some government officials to act on his behalf. Now, the executive order you're going to have to read on your own. Okay? And it's not hard reading or anything like that. I've also put in here, too, the segments of law which he used to base this on. Like, notice he said at the top, he's basing this on Section 1182 of the U.S. Legal Code. All right, well, here's Section 1182F. Okay, and here's Section 1185A, restrictions and prohibitions. All right, and so Trump says, look, I'm pretty sure that these laws give me the authority to make this order. Now, here's what you're going to have to do, and you don't do this today. Don't worry about getting it online today because this was for last year's kids and I forgot to edit it. But you have 3 questions that you're going to address. One, do you believe that Trump has the authority based on these 2 laws to establish this executive order? Okay, so you're going to have to read the order and then you have to read the laws and point out where in the laws it gives the president the authority to do that. All right, you can argue either side. I think there's a case to be made either way. 2, name a specific cabinet official empowered by this order and explain one responsibility they have. And 3, describe one way that each of the other 2 branches could render this executive order ineffective. Means Congress and the Supreme Court. Now, some of that we haven't talked about yet, so you'll have to do some reading on your own. You need to answer those on a sheet of paper by Monday. Okay? If you want to write that down, that's fine. Monday. All right? These executive orders are already dropped into your Schoology folder, so you don't have to worry about that. Any questions regarding this? No? Good. Let's move right along here. Okay. One of the other powers the president has, budget preparation. Okay. Now remember, technically, who has to authorize any spending of government money? Congress does. Okay. But anytime Congress passes a law, who has to approve of it? The president does. All right. And the president and Congress try to work together on budget preparation. All right. And we'll talk about budget preparation tomorrow, guys. That's a good place for us to stop.